on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon. Recovery workers step up their search for the missing AirAsia jet after an Indonesian team recovered 6 bodies and pulled debris from the crash site. The former vice president of Korean Air has been arrested on charges of violating aviation safety law for making a plane turn back to the gate because she didn't like the way nuts were served to her. Plus, a U.S.-based cybersecurity firm says a former Sony employee could have helped hackers launch the attack on the studio, casting doubt on whether North Korea was responsible. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in on this last day of 2014. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this New Year's Eve lunchtime. President Park Geun-hye says her administration is going to refocus its efforts in 2015 on laying the groundwork for reunification with North Korea.
In her New Year's message released Wednesday, President Park pledged to end the 70-year-long conflict between the two Koreas and open a new era of reunification based on strong national security and by changing the North through trust. Domestically, the president stressed the most important task facing her administration right now is revitalizing the economy. She pledged to change basic economic fundamentals to do so and also promised to continue to address deep-rooted irregularities to create a safer society. Now, moving on to the search for the missing AirAsia flight, rescuers have recovered a total of 6 bodies from the ill-fated passenger jet in the Java Sea near Borneo.
The search continues, but there's now little hope of finding any survivors among the 162 people who were on the plane when it disappeared on Sunday. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
The international hunt for AirAsia Flight 8501 resumed on Wednesday with search teams scouring the sea for more wreckage or bodies. Indonesia's chief of search and rescue says 6 bodies, including that of a flight attendant, have been recovered so far. He has also confirmed the debris discovered in waters off Borneo were from the missing jet. A plane door, an oxygen tank, and one of the recovered bodies have been taken away for tests. Distraught relatives of victims broke down in tears as pictures of floating bodies and objects were broadcast live on Indonesian TV. The Indonesian president has ordered a massive search operation to find everyone that was on board the plane. AirAsia CEO Tony Fernandez says support would be offered to the families and search teams will work for a speedy conclusion.
It's a horrible, horrible experience, but we will try to do our best. That's our focus right now.
It's still unknown what caused the plane to crash into the sea Sunday, less than an hour after taking off from Surabaya to Singapore. Some 30 ships and 20 aircraft from Indonesia, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, and the U.S. have been deployed in the search. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now back here in Korea, and the former vice president of Korean Air, who made international headlines this month over the so-called nut rage incident, will be ringing in the new year from behind bars.
Cho Yeon-ah was arrested on Tuesday and will be held in detention for the time being. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Cho Yeon-ah, the former vice president of Korean Air, was taken into custody late Tuesday night on charges of violating aviation safety laws and abusing flight attendants in the incident that is now most commonly referred to as nut rage.
같이 탔던 승객분들이나 사무장분들 하시고 싶은 말씀 있으십니까?
폭행과 폭언이 있었는지 여부도 여전히 부인하시는 겁니까?
Earlier this month, Cho ordered a plane she was traveling on to return to the gate in New York after she was served macadamia nuts in a bag, not on a plate, as is the service protocol for first-class passengers. Cho stands accused of forcing the chief steward of that flight off the plane and physically assaulting him. Korean Air is also under fire over allegations that it tried to cover up the case. On top of former Vice President Cho, a current executive of Korean Air was also detained on charges that he had destroyed evidence and forced subordinates to give false testimonies to investigators.
Yes, I partially acknowledged.
일부 인정하신 부분이 어떤 부분들이시죠?
I acknowledged the mistakes I've made.
Korea's transport ministry is also in the hot seat for the way it has handled its side of the investigation. Last week, a ministry official was arrested for leaking details of the probe into Korean Air. The ministry has since vowed to punish 8 of its officials for misconduct during the investigation. Korean Air faces a possible 30-day flight ban, most likely on its New York to Seoul route, or fines of up to $2 million. Kim Young-git, Arirang News.
The FBI recently blamed North Korea for last month's cyber attack on Sony Pictures, but experts remain highly skeptical of the U.S. agency's claims.
Yeah, that's right. New information has come to light that seems to suggest a disgruntled former employee of Sony was behind the attack, not Pyongyang's elite band of cyber hackers. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
U.S. cyber experts say they have concrete evidence that a former employee of Sony Pictures was behind the recent hacking attack on the company, not North Korea. Cyber intelligence firm North Corporation said Monday that it had narrowed its search to 6 suspects, one of whom is a former Sony employee who had the technical capabilities to carry out such an attack. North says it had data on the malware used in the attack, and that it pointed to information that only Sony Insider would have. The firm's findings run counter to what the FBI has said about the case. They have pinned the attack on Pyongyang and are sticking to their guns. The FBI, in a statement on Tuesday, said there was no credible information to suggest anyone other than North Korea was involved. From the outset, suspicion in the attack was directed at the North. The virus used for the attack was coded in a Korean language environment similar to the ones that struck South Korean banks in 2013. But experts say that is not enough to link the attack on Sony to North Korea, as the malware is available on the black market. Cybersecurity experts say there's a slight chance the FBI's conclusion might be correct, since they may have access to intelligence that points directly to North Korea, intelligence the FBI has chosen not to disclose. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Korea's consumer prices this year grew at their slowest pace since 1999. Data released by Statistics Korea shows prices only edged up 1.3% in 2014 from a year earlier, raising concerns over deflation, with the country posting a 1% range price growth for the second consecutive year. This growth figure is way below the Bank of Korea's target range of 2.5% to 3.5% set to stabilize prices. As for December alone, consumer prices edged up by a mere 0.8% from a year earlier, marking the slowest growth in 14 months. Analysts attribute the slow growth to falling global oil prices and say downward pressure will continue for the time being as crude prices continue to drop. On the last trading session of the year, which was Tuesday, Korea's benchmark Kospi edged down 0.64%, closing at 1,915. Over the year, shares dropped nearly 4.8%, marking one of the worst scorecards among G20 countries, which averaged a near 9% rise. Russia was the only country that saw its shares drop by a bigger margin than Korea. They fell 45%. Now, the Korean bourse started off 2014 above the 2,000 mark and topped out at 2,090 in July. In recent weeks, however, falling oil prices, the weak Japanese yen, and disappointing performances from Samsung and Hyundai have dragged the Kospi down. And Korean builders clinched $66 billion in overseas construction projects this year, the second highest total in the country's history. The Land Ministry says this year's figure was up 1.2% compared to last year, but still fell short of the government's target of $70 billion. The contract spanned across 455 firms and 99 countries. The Middle East was by far the most lucrative place for Korean builders in 2014. Nearly half of the $68 billion secured came from the region, which is a traditional stronghold for Korea's construction industry. And continuing our look back at the last 12 months, early optimism that 2014 could be a good year for the Korean economy faded pretty fast. The tragic Seoul ferry disaster in April and a variety of international factors meant the country couldn't break free from its slow growth trap. For a wrap-up of this year's economic highs and lows and a look forward to 2015, here's Kwon So-ah.
Life is hard. Something must be done about the economy.
There's a limit to the money ordinary people can really use.
I've been working at the market for around 14 years. This year felt like the most difficult year.
There were expectations of an economic recovery at the beginning of the year. But now, the country is grappling with slow growth. April's Seoul ferry disaster dragged down consumer and business confidence, resulting in lower consumption and lower investments. The Consumer Sentiment Index plunged to 105 in May. There were short signs of recovery, but the index dropped for 3 straight months again.
I don't think anybody really expected the effect from Seoul to last this long. But I think we were very unlucky in that it was coupled by some international developments. For example, slowdown in China, slowdown in EU.
The government has responded to those internal and external factors.
Whether it's fiscal or monetary, we need an expansionary policy for the time being.
Dubbed Twenomics, the government's plans included a $40 billion stimulus package and deregulation measures for housing loans. For support, the Bank of Korea cut the key interest rate once in August and again in October. But historically high levels of household debt have been a hindrance to monetary policies, raising concerns of a long-drawn slump.
Okay, if you asked me about 3 months ago, I would say no. But because the situation has gone on for so long, I would say that it is within the realm of possibility right now.
But many analysts say Korea isn't likely to follow the footsteps of Japan that has suffered from decades of lost growth.
There have been positive signs of late, such as low oil prices and the depreciating won.
And some say if private spending increases in the first quarter of next year, the economy might even do better than the government's most recent 2015 growth projection of 3.8%. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And keeping on with our look back on the year, on the trade front, 2014 could be remembered as the year of free trade agreements for Korea, at least. Seoul concluded negotiations with 4 countries this year alone, making it the first country among the world's top 10 trading nations to seal free trade deals with the US, the European Union, and now China. For a rundown on all of this, here's our Trade Ministry correspondent, Song Ji-son.
With the latest edition of a Korea-Vietnam FTA earlier this month, Korea has concluded negotiations with 4 countries this year, starting with Canada in March and then China and New Zealand in November. Seoul now has 15 FTA agreements with 52 nations, accounting for 73% of the global economy. This achievement is all the more remarkable as it was reached in a little over a decade, with Korea's first FTA with Chile going into effect in 2004. As for the FTA with China, Korea's biggest trading partner, Seoul made the protection of its agricultural sector its top priority, excluding rice and other major agriculture and fishery products from its deal, while China granted Korea greater access to its service and ICT sector. With Vietnam, bilateral trade volume is expected to grow by at least 20% next year. And as for the deal with Canada, that's set to go into effect on January 1st next year, Korean automobiles, accounting for more than 40% of Korea's total exports to Canada, are set to be the biggest beneficiary. But meanwhile, Korea's livestock industry will be hit hard though, as tariff on Canadian and New Zealand beef will gradually be lifted over the next 15 years. In 2014, Seoul's focus was on wrapping up bilateral free trade deals, but for 2015, it's on sealing multilateral and regional pacts. Korea's goal is to ink a trilateral deal with China and Japan before the end of 2015 and reach agreements in the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which involves 10 ASEAN member nations, along with India, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan and China. 송지선, Arirang News.
And 2014 was a very competitive year, as you'd expect, in the IT sector. Some companies managed to get a big leg up on their competition, while others fell behind the rest. For a rundown of some of the key events of 2014 in the IT sector and what we might expect to happen in 2015, Kim Ji-yeon reports.
2015 is forecast to be a golden year for mobile messengers as they expand into other sectors such as finance. Korea's top mobile messenger and web portal Daum Kakao introduced the bank wallet Kakao in 2014, allowing its 37 million users to transfer up to nearly $100 a day to other Kakao users. The service is changing the way people send gifts of condolence or celebration to family and friends. And local commercial banks have seized on the opportunity as well. Their participation enables users to transfer the money they receive straight into their personal banking account the following day. Daum Kakao is also expanding into a credit card payment service that helps users purchase goods online. All of this is possible in part because of Korea's obsession for fast connectivity. The country's largest telecommunications operators are commercializing an ultra-high-speed tri-band LTE service. It will enable users to download a movie in less than 30 seconds. This is 4 times faster than 4G LTE service. However, it's currently only available in certain parts of the country where at least 3 audio frequencies are available. The telecom operators hope to expand availability throughout the coming months. The same obsession for growth is expected to help local companies become the first to commercialize the 5th-generation service, which is 1,000 times faster than 4G LTE. SK Telecom is aiming to provide the 5G service at the upcoming 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. Samsung Electronics has set a goal of commercializing the service by the year 2020. The company believes the move will give them a competitive advantage in the era of the Internet of Things, in which everything we touch and interact with is connected to the World Wide Web. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, Uber has to move aside because the world's most valuable technology startup now resides in China. Xiaomi, the Chinese smartphone maker, has raised a whopping $1.1 billion from investors alone. And this puts its total valuation now at a staggering $45 billion. Our Eoh Jin-joo tells us more.
Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi is on a roll. It has even edged out the taxi booking app Uber for the honor of being the world's most valuable startup. The company announced that it has raised over $1 billion in its latest round of fundraising, pushing Xiaomi's value to $45 billion. Founded just 4 years ago, the company's remarkable tale of growth has grabbed many by surprise. Earlier this year, it was named the world's 3rd largest smartphone maker by shipment volume, overtaking both Samsung and Apple in China. China has over 500 million smartphone users in the country. So what led to the success? The company provides high-quality phones at cheaper prices by conducting sales through the internet and luring in young consumers with clever marketing strategies. With its skyrocketing growth, it's now eyeing the global market. This year, Xiaomi entered India, Malaysia, Singapore, Mexico, and Brazil. However, critics have accused Xiaomi of copying Apple in its smartphone designs and marketing campaigns for new products. In fact, the Swedish telecom giant Ericsson sued Xiaomi this month for allegedly infringing on its patents. Other challenges abound for the fast-growing startup, with one of them being the rise of rival companies in China that are trying to undercut Xiaomi by using similar tactics. Lee Ji-un, Arirang News.
Korea's largest automaker Hyundai Motor says it's going to build 2 new auto plants next year in the Chinese cities of Changju and Chongqing. Once completed, the factories will be the company's 4th and 5th in China. The move comes as Hyundai Motor plans to boost annual production in China from the current 1.2 million units to 1.8 million by 2018. Hyundai Motor and its sister company Kia Motors have sold a record 8 million units globally this year. Local media reports say the automakers are planning to sell 8.2 million cars in 2015.
And time now to get a check on some of the other global headlines we're following this hour. For that, we have our Sun Jung-in joining us from the News Center.
Jung-in, the rescue mission off the coast of Greece was presumed to be complete, but more casualties have been reported from that Italian-flagged ferry that caught fire in the middle of the Adriatic Sea about 3 days ago.
That's right, Mark. The latest deaths happened during salvage operations to secure the vessel that has been drifting since Sunday morning when the fire broke out on a car deck. 2 sailors from Albania were killed apparently when they were hit by a cable that they had been trying to attach to the hull to tow the ferry. Also, it has been reported that 1 more body was recovered on the same day, bringing the passenger death toll to 11. Meanwhile, discrepancy of the ship's manifest and the actual number of passengers had led investigators believe that more people could be missing. An investigation is also underway to find the exact cause of the fire and to see whether negligence contributed to the incident. The Somali government says a U.S. airstrike killed the intelligence chief of the Somali terror group Al-Shabaab. The National Intelligence and Security Agency said Tuesday that Abdi Shakur Talil was killed along with 2 other Al-Shabaab militants. It said the strike took place on Monday when the leader was traveling between Shako and the village of Jawari, destroying the vehicle he was traveling in. Al-Shabaab is an ultra-conservative Islamic militant group that aims to overthrow the Somali government. A second patient who was being tested for Ebola was found to be negative for the infection. The Scottish government said a blood sample of the female health care worker was taken to a testing facility in Edinburgh and that it was confirmed as negative for the virus. The woman who has recently returned from West Africa was taken to a hospital on Tuesday after complaining of feeling unwell at a youth hostel in the Highlands. This comes a day after another healthcare worker identified as Pauline Kavriki was diagnosed with the virus after returning from Sierra Leone. The patient, who arrived in Glasgow on Sunday, was placed in an isolation unit and is now being treated at a hospital in London.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the New Year's Eve forecast. We had snow earlier than expected in Seoul this morning, but nothing compared to what other regions are looking at over the coming hours. A snow squall advisory has been issued for the west coast regions of Jeollado province, where up to 15 centimeters is expected, and the middle band, however, of the country will see between 3 and 8 centimeters through tomorrow morning. On top of the snow, it's also gotten colder. Daytime highs will range anywhere between 2 to 12 degrees Celsius throughout the country, but it'll feel much colder due to the strong winds. As we move into 2015, our more cold air will be moving in as well. We're looking at lows of minus 10 degrees on the morning of New Year's Day. Those temperatures will slowly back up as we head into our weekend, but make sure to layer up if you're going outside for the countdown. And now to our readings for today. So it'll be at 2 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 5 and 9 degrees. And to other regions such as Jeju Island will get up to 12, Dokdo hits down to 4, while Mangkhungang is much colder at -5 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, this is where we say goodbye on this last day of 2014.
Jin-joo and I will be back on Friday, January 2nd.
We wish you a happy new year and hope everything goes well for all of you.
Yeah, we certainly do. And have a happy and most importantly, healthy 2015. And also don't forget to tune in to our Arirang TV end of year special. That gets underway from 10 p.m. Korea time. Should be a lot of fun. That. And as I said, we'll be back at the same time on Friday. So until then, goodbye.